I think it only appeals to a very specific, insufferable, chronically online audience, and unfortunately, I am that insufferable, chronically online audience. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video. It is that time of year again. We are fast approaching the end of the year. It will probably be 2026 by the time I edit and upload this video. It'll probably be like February by the time I edit and upload this video. But yes, at the time of filming, it is the 30th of December, and it is time to talk about some books I read in 2025. At the time of filming, I have currently read, I believe, 144 books, which is more than I read last year. Last year I read 141 books. I was kind of hoping I would get to 150 by the end of this year, but like December has been insanely busy for me. I was doing a Christmas show over like most of the month, and between rehearsing, like spending all day in a theatre, and then performing again, spending all day in a theatre, doing like 10:30 performances to groups of school children, I haven't had a lot of time to like actually settle down and do some reading. Any free time that I've had, I have spent sleeping. So if not for that, I would have hit 150 books, I'm pretty sure. But 144 is still a lot. Like, it's a ridiculous amount. That is averaging, what, 12 books a month? Yeah, 12 books a month. So that would be 3 books a week. That's like crazy. That is actually like crazy numbers. And it's also not normal. I do not have a full-time job. I spend most of my free time reading. Yeah, it's one of my kind of very much main hobbies in life. So like it's not really achievable for the average person. I just wanted to like put it out there in case anyone tries to cancel me for reading too many books. It's like I can't help it. It's like my main personality trait. So, out of those 144 books, I have picked out a list of 25 books because of 2025 that were my favorites in the entire year. These were like the cream of the crop. These were ones that I loved, would thoroughly recommend to most people. Some of them like have very select audiences. I would not recommend them to everyone, but like I'll get to that. But overall, all of these books slapped, and hopefully there will be a couple that intrigue you and you'll want to add them to your 2026 TBRs. Just a couple of ground rules before we start. I mean, I've been doing this for like, this is my 3rd year doing this video now. I really enjoy doing these videos because I just get to yap about books I enjoy for like ages. But yeah, ground rules. I'm not going to talk about rereads because I did quite a few rereads this year of books that I love, and they actually made up about half of my 5-star ratings. But I have definitely talked about all of them in videos before, either like themed reading challenges or like general vlogs, or in my yearly wrap up videos, like this one, but like a year ago or 2 years ago. I've definitely talked about them before, so I'm not gonna like include those in the list so that I could like try and include as many books as possible, as many new books as possible. And similarly, I'm only including 1 book per author. There are a couple of occasions where like 2 or 3 books by the same author have like appeared like at the top of my stars. But again, to try and like include as many different books as possible, I've only included like the best book from that author. So like there are a few honorable mentions for sure. I'm gonna go in kind of reverse order. Like most of these books aren't really in a specific order of like preference. But they're grouped by like star rating. So the first 11 books I'm going to talk about are my 4.5 star ratings. I had to bump a few 4.5 star ratings off of the list just to like have a nice round 25. But like these are like my top tier 4.5 ratings. They're like the upper half, edging into 4.75, but like they're still really good. I'd say like my 4.5 star ratings, I'm a pretty strict rater, especially because like I do it on Storygraph. I get 1/4 star ratings. It's amazing. I don't know how I would survive with only whole stars. Like, how could you differentiate between like a top tier 4-star and then like a bottom tier 4-star? Like, I don't know. But my 4.5 stars are probably like most other people's 5-star books. Like they're still really, really good. And they're like special books that I think about a lot. But, you know, they're not quite up there. They're not quite like they don't have that 5-star feeling, but they're still like really good. And then the next 11 books I'm going to talk about, my 4.75 star books, which are just a little bit better than the 4.5 stars. Maybe I might have like one very, very small criticism about them. They're not perfect, but like for most other people, they would be 5 stars, maybe even 6-star reads. And then the final 3 books will be my 5-star reads. You see, like how I'm quite picky and quite a harsh rater. I rated 6 books 5 stars this year, which is actually more than I've ever rated 5 stars before. But 3 of those books were rereads, so actually there are only kind of 3 new books that I rated 5 stars, which is not very many if you think about it. But those books are like literal perfection. They would be like other people's infinite star reads. I could reread them again and again. They made me feel things that I didn't know I could feel. That came out wrong. They're just so insanely good, and I will inevitably just like keep yapping about them for ages and ages. Anyway, I've done enough preamble. Let's just get straight on with the list. That is what you are watching this video for. Enough of me. Let's just talk about some books. So, as I said, I am going to start off with my 4.5 star rated books. And the first book I want to talk about is this one, When the Museum is Closed by Emi Yagi, translated by Yuki Tajima. This is by the same person who wrote Diary of a Void, which I haven't read, but now I really, really want to. This book follows a woman who is hired to do a bit of a strange job. She speaks fluent Latin, and she gets hired to kind of be a companion to a statue of the goddess Venus, who, for some reason that is not explained, is alive. She's a sentient living statue who can't like move very far, but like she is sentient enough to like be lonely and need a companion. And this woman is essentially hired to, when the museum is closed, she goes and talks to her, has conversation with her. And eventually, gradually through their conversations, they begin to fall in love. But obviously, you know, one of them is a human, one of them is a statue who belongs to a museum. How is this romance going to work? I just love this story. It's so short, but like really impactful, really sweet. There is a lot of pining. There's kind of an extended metaphor throughout the book of the narrator having quite severe anxiety that is it's kind of depicted through this image of like a very big, very tight, heavy yellow raincoat that she's wearing all the time. And when her anxiety gets really bad, like the coat gets really heavy and like obscures her vision and stuff. And I thought that was such a unique but like really impactful way of depicting anxiety. That was just an image that really stayed with me, like even after I finished reading the book. It's so well written, it's so well translated. It's weird. Like it's a really weird book with a weird concept, but it's so sweet. The way I would describe this book would be Night at the Museum, but sapphic. And that's it. If that hasn't convinced you to read this book, then I don't know what will. Next up, we have Careless People by Sarah Wynn-Williams. This is a memoir that follows the author's, I think, 7 years working at Facebook. She worked on international policy, and kind of through the company, she met a lot of like world leaders and was kind of heading international policy in this like massive company that was at the forefront of the tech industry for many years. And like she got up close and personal with Mark Zuckerberg and a load of other like head honchos at Facebook. So like she knew so much tea. She knew like so many things that went down. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of reads like a satire. Like it reads like kind of an office-esque sitcom about people at a company who like aren't very good at their jobs. Like they don't know what they're doing, but somehow they keep getting away with loads of stuff. Like, it's kind of scary how all of the stuff that happens in the book actually happened, like in real life. Obviously, some things were probably embellished. I feel like you do need to take what is said in the book with a grain of salt. Um, I think the author was definitely complicit in a lot of the terrible things that Facebook did over like her time with the company. She's definitely not a saint and she shouldn't be treated as such. But if you are after a nonfiction book that will make you feel viscerally angry about the state of the world and the state of the people who are in charge of making big global decisions, then like this is the perfect book for you. Let me just say, there is a reason why Facebook did not want this book published. There's a reason why the author and the publishers weren't allowed to do a lot of press before this book was released. But as a result of not being able to do a lot of press and Facebook trying to cover this book up, it's kind of had like a Barbra Streisand effect on the book, and like it's pretty massive now, and for good reason. Like, expose those people making terrible decisions. Next up, we have Gifted and Talented by Olivie Blake. This, I think, has become my favorite Olivie Blake book. This takes kind of all of the things I like about her previous books I've read, the kind of the magical realism, how like magic is paired up with like capitalism and stuff, sibling rivalries. Like, Olivia Blake writes siblings so well, so realistically. It's a book about three siblings, three quite different siblings who are all potential heirs to this big kind of magical technological company, who are kind of left to pick up the pieces after their father, who is the head of this company, dies. And these siblings are all so messy. They're flawed. They're three-dimensional. They can do magic, but like at a price. They kind of each have slightly different curses placed on them that are kind of to do with like emotional baggage. The narration style is so like it's original. It's well, I wouldn't say it's original because I feel like it has been done before, but it's so well done in this case. Sometimes I do feel like Olivia Blake's a little bit too clever for her own good, but sometimes like she is clever in a way that churns out masterpieces like this. So yeah, it's great. Next up, I want to talk about Greedy Guts by Gina Tonic. I got this as an arc off of NetGalley. I think this was actually the first arc that I read from NetGalley. Back when I first got my account in like February. This is a memoir about being fat, growing up fat, and living as a fat person in an inherently fat phobic society, and how fatness impacts every single aspect of your life, from, you know, going shopping for clothes to dating to your self image, self esteem, to eating and diets and eating disorders. And yeah, it was like depressing to read, but at the same time, it was insanely validating. Like, the book put into words so many things that I myself have experienced, but I've never like had the words to voice, to express. And there are also points made that I had never even thought about myself. So like, it's an eye-opening read, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. Like, regardless of whether you're fat or not, I think you should read the book. Next up is Rejection by Toni Tulathimutte. This is a collection of short stories that are all themed around rejection. They're interconnected, so like characters that are like mentioned like offhand in one story will turn up as the main characters of another story, which is really cool. I find that just a really interesting concept, especially when it's done well. I think it's so fun having interconnected stories. The stories are clever. They get really meta, especially towards the end. Like, the final story is written in the format of an email, literally rejecting the manuscript of Rejection from like a fictional publisher to the author. Like, it is just, it's such a silly concept, but it's executed really well, weirdly. It is darkly funny, and there are definite moments of being like, what the hell am I reading? Some of the content is actually quite sickening. Like, there are some of the most perverse, graphic descriptions of sex and desires that I have ever read. The book is truly not for the faint-hearted. Like, I think it only appeals to a very specific, insufferable, chronically online audience, and unfortunately, I am that insufferable, chronically online audience. And I also feel like a lot of the references to like internet culture will become pretty dated in the next like couple of years. I mean, memes and internet culture move so fast, so it like the references will get old quickly. I just feel like the book found me at the perfect time. So like, if you are at all interested and you read the content warnings and you're okay with them, I feel like you probably want to read this book sooner rather than later, if that makes sense. But also, I will warn you, do not read the book in public. Please. Don't inflict it onto other people who have not consented. But overall, I feel like this hasn't been like a book recommendation and more like a book unrecommendation, because I keep listing reasons why you shouldn't read it. But like, it is truly such a well written collection of stories that are so clever and made me feel various emotions incredibly strongly. Most of them negative emotions, but like, it is just such a masterful story collection featuring pretty terrible but well written, unlikable characters doing terrible things. Next up, we have The Pairing by Casey McQuiston, and this was a bit of a surprise to me. I was very surprised that I enjoyed this book, let alone that it would be one of, if not my favorite romance book of the year. Like, from all of the reviews I read, they were pretty lukewarm, leaning towards negative. So I went into this book with low expectations, even though I've really enjoyed Casey McQuiston's other books in the past. But I gotta say, this was amazing. This is a second chance romance, which immediately I was kind of like, okay. I'm not the biggest fan of second chance romance as a trope, but the two main characters, the two exes in this book, are childhood friends, childhood sweethearts. Um, one of them is a pastry chef, the other one is a sommelier, and they go on um this the kind of road trip, this tour around Europe. There's just kind of about tasting food and wine that they booked before they broke up, but they still kind of want to go on it, so they accidentally end up on it together. And yeah, throughout the trip they heal, they do a lot of pining. The descriptions of food in this book are amazing. Like, it's so vivid, you truly feel like you are there, like in Italy, drinking wine and eating food with these characters. This is just a really sweet book. I do feel like it's got a slightly more mature tone to it than Casey McQuiston's other books. I feel like they have matured somewhat as a writer. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Next up is Mythica by Emily Hauser. This was another arc that I read on NetGalley pretty early on in my NetGalley journey, and I was flabbergasted that I got approved for this arc, because I love Emily Hauser stuff. I read her Golden Apples trilogy. It was over a few years actually that I read all three books, but like, I am obsessed. So this was right up my street. It is a non-fiction book, kind of a feminist history, that looks at the world of Homer, or well, the world that the Trojan War of Homer's poetry might have taken place, um, i.e., the Mycenaean period, but specifically looking at it through kind of a feminist lens. It combines literary analysis of the Iliad and the Odyssey with cutting edge archaeological research that, is recent. It's very recent. We are still discovering like new things about the ancient world. Like people who lived thousands and thousands of years ago. We are still discovering new things even today. It's great. It combines both those things to create a really vivid portrait of what life might have looked like for women in the ancient Mediterranean. And the book is structured like going character by character as well. Like it will have a chapter on Penelope, for example, which we'll talk about like weaving. It will have a chapter on Penthesilea. We'll talk about the Amazons and who the Amazons might have been based on, like women warriors and fighters. It will have a chapter on Melantho and talk about female slaves in the ancient world. It is just such an interesting book. It has both breadth of information and depth as well. It covers so much ground, but in a lot of detail. I did get this book as an electronic arc, as an ebook, but the ebook didn't have images, pictures, or anything. So I wanted to get a physical copy that had pictures so that like I could, you know, have a more kind of visual understanding, I guess. Hang on. Why don't I have my copy with me? Hang on. One sec. I straight up forgot to get this book out of my shelf when I was putting together all of my books for this video. Yeah, it's a thick book. But yeah, I enjoyed it so much that I wanted a physical copy. And yeah, it's really cool. It's so interesting. Next up, we have Nesting by Rashina Donnell, which is a literary fiction, a contemporary literary fiction set in Dublin about a woman who takes her two young children, her two young daughters, and leaves her husband very suddenly because she gets to a breaking point and she can't put up with what she eventually comes to realize was an abusive marriage. This, again, was a book that made me feel quite uncomfortable to read, but like not necessarily in a bad way, in a way that felt like necessary to fully understand what was going through the mind of the main character. I found the main character so sympathetic, and you were really rooting for her throughout the entire book as she struggled with the housing crisis in Dublin, you know, struggling in temporary housing in hotels and stuff, and all of the rules being so strict in those situations. Her realizing that domestic abuse isn't always physical and it can be emotional, financial, and her just kind of taking back her own life and her own agency. It's a very intimate book, I feel. And yeah, it is definitely a must read as long as you're okay with the content warnings, obviously. Next up is We Are Not Numbers, which is a collection of writings, essays, articles, poetry from young people living in Gaza. This was a collection put together out of like the project We Are Not Numbers, which is a website that has existed for about 10 years now, where you have these native English speakers who are usually writers and journalists in their own right, and they mentor young people from Gaza, helping with their English, helping with their writing skills, giving them kind of connections to like publications and things. And it publishes pieces about kind of everyday life in Gaza to raise awareness about what has been going on there for longer than since 2023, but like really many, many years. And this book is just such an important and poignant book for so many reasons. Firstly, because not only does it talk about kind of all of the atrocities that Israel has been committing in Gaza for years and years, like since the Nakba of 1948, 49, around then. So like almost 80 years, basically. So not only does it talk about all of the terrible stuff that has been going on in Gaza, but it also, like, there are writings about the things that these young writers love about their home, and their pride for their home country, and their desires to see it reunited with the West Bank. There are writings that talk about their favorite restaurants, their favorite cafes, food stalls in the city. There are writings that share like culture and celebrate their culture, and festivals, and you know, things that happen that are meant to be happy but like always overshadowed by war and violence. And it's also especially poignant because we know that quite a few of these young writers who contributed to this book are no longer with us, and have been killed in the genocide. And it is even more important to share their stories because of this, to keep their voices and their stories alive, even if they're unfortunately no longer around to share them themselves. Like with most of these books, it is an absolute must read, but I think even more so, it is a must read. It's essential reading, I want to say. Next up is Voice Like Hyacinth by Mallory Pearson. This is kind of a dark academia horror thriller type book. The way I would describe it is like what If We Were Villains is to drama and Shakespeare, what Bunny is to creative writing, what The Secret History is to classics, Voice Like Hyacinth is to visual art. This book follows, I think, 5 friends, a group of 5 best friends who are all at this like elite art college. They're all art majors, fine art majors, and they're in their final year and they're working towards this like big exhibition that will showcase a very select group of works. They're part of a cohort of students, and eventually 5 students out of this cohort will get picked to showcase their work, and that basically like guarantees them success for life as artists. And these 5 students want to be those 5 people whose work gets showcased. And then from those 5 showcase students, 1 student gets picked to like have the main exhibition, and that is like the golden ticket to success. So obviously each one of these 5 students wants to also be that kind of first place student as well. So that kind of causes a lot of tension within the group. So in their desire to get picked to have their work showcased, they end up engaging in kind of an occult ritual that will hopefully promise them success and prosperity. But while the ritual kind of works, it comes at a price. It's a book about female friendships, female rivalries, what happens when friendships turn sour. It's very eerie and atmospheric. They're on this campus in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of old buildings and stuff. There are potentially spirits around. Yeah, it's honestly like it's such a great book, and it came out like early this year, I want to say like February time. Um and yeah, it's like stuck in my head ever since I read it, and it definitely deserves a lot more hype. Next up, we have Boudicca's Daughter by Elodie Harper. Of course, I was gonna put an Elodie Harper book on this list. When have I not? In my now 3 years of talking about my favorite books of each year, every single time we have Elodie Harper. She has not let us down. This is a standalone historical fiction set in the same world as the Wolf Den trilogy. You don't need to have read the Wolf Den trilogy to read this one, but it's such a good trilogy, so like why wouldn't you? There are characters that appear in the Wolf Den trilogy that also appear in this book. This, I believe, takes place about 15 years before the first book in the Wolf Den trilogy, so like it's kind of a prequel, but it does work as a standalone as well. And for the most part, we follow one of Boudicca's daughters, who Elodie Harper's called Selena in this book. And she is kind of coming of age while Rome is kind of in the process of conquering Britain. And so she witnesses the rebellion that her mother instigates, which happens as a result of a really violent and shocking act that happens to Selena herself. And then inevitably, I mean, this is kind of a mild spoiler, but like this is real history that happened, you know, many years ago. Many years ago. That you probably will have learnt about at school. So like it's okay to spoil this stuff. The rebellion fails, and Selena winds up in Rome. So kind of half of the book takes place in Rome and Britain, and half the book takes place in ancient Rome. And as well as Selena's point of view, you get a few chapters from Boudicca's point of view, which kind of depicts her as a very kind of complex woman who is very fierce but like driven by love for her people and for her daughters. And you also get the point of view of a guy called Paulinus, who is like the Roman legionary. He was like in charge of the division of the Roman army that went against Boudicca in the rebellion, and eventually won. So you get kind of three different POVs, mostly surrounding Selena and her story, but you really do get the rebellion and its fall from like all sides, basically. And the two things I have loved about all of Elodie Harper's books are what I also love most about this book, and that is the characterization, specifically the depiction of female characters. There are a lot of female characters in this book, and all of them are different and three-dimensional, fully fleshed out and flawed and messy, and is just so lovely watching them like interact, even if they're interacting in like negative ways and there are rivalries and things like that. It's just so refreshing to have a large cast of really well written female characters. You don't get that very often, especially in historical fiction. And the other thing I love about Elodie Harper's books is the setting. It's always so incredibly vivid. And both Rome and Britain, which you get in the first half of the book, and ancient Rome, which you get in the second half, again, they're so vividly depicted. It's like you are wandering around in on those streets with these characters. It's just, yeah, it's so vivid, so detailed. Yeah, it was a great book. The sun is now fully in my eyes right now, but it's fine. I'm just going to squint for a bit. We move. We're going to cope. We're going to move on to my 4.75 star books now. These are, yeah, books that I love so much. They might not be like true 5-star perfection, but for like most people, they will probably be like 6-star reads. So we're going to start off with Bad Habit by Alana Portero, translated by Morafe Letham. This is a book about a young trans woman, trans girl, growing up in Spain, kind of coming of age, coming to terms with her identity, and yeah, kind of interacting with all of these different people in her life and how those interactions shape her. This book is so incredibly well written. There's just so much heart, so much like pain poured into these pages. The main character never actually gets a name other than her dead name, which she's called by a few times. So like that kind of feeds into her whole like she's still searching for her identity kind of thing. But like you just want to give her a hug. She goes through it in this book. There was a really lovely kind of extended motif throughout the book of likening all of these different people that the main character comes across in her life to the figures from Greek mythology. Again, as a Greek mythology nerd, I loved this metaphor so much. So, like her first boyfriend, for example, is likened to Bagoas, who was the Persian lover of Alexander the Great. There are some older trans women that she comes across who kind of help to raise her, basically. And they're likened to like Medea and Medusa, who are like fierce icons of mythology. It was just a really lovely way of showing in what ways these all of these different characters impacted the main character in her life and her identity growing up. Again, it's a relatively short book, but it's a sweet book. It is incredibly sad and quite painful to read at times. So I would check content warnings, but yeah, definitely recommend. And next we have The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. The sun is still painfully bright in my eyes right now, but it is making the cover of this look amazing. So I'm not angry. This is kind of a speculative sci-fi book about what might happen if the British government got control of a time travel machine. Our main character is hired by the British government as kind of a mentor, not really a mentor. I forget what her official job title is, but is she a bridge? They call her a bridge. She's meant to kind of be a primary contact for what they call expats, who are people from the past that have been brought into the present, and her job is to help one of these people adjust. And yeah, she does that. There's a little bit of a slow burn romance that blossoms, but throughout the book, um, there are secrets uncovered that suggest that what might be happening with this time travel project, this initiative, might not be completely above board. There might be some more sinister things going on beneath the surface, which, I mean, it's the British government. Who could have known? This book is kind of marketed as like a variety of different genres. It's sci-fi, it's romance. People say it's a comedy, but it's not a comedy. It will rip your heart out and stomp on it. Just to warn you, don't read it thinking it's a comedy. It will not make you laugh. It will make you cry. Not tears of laughter, tears of sadness and despair. I grew very attached to many of the characters in this book. Um, Honestly, finishing this book felt like saying goodbye to a group of friends. I could talk for days and days about this book, but I feel like I already have on this channel. So I'm going to keep it relatively brief. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's great. Right, I had a quick halftime break to eat some lunch and upload some footage, and the sun is literally going down now. So that's great. I love the passage of time. Anyway, we are still talking about 4.75 star books. So let's carry on. This is Aphrodite by Phoenicia Rogerson. Honorable mention to Herc by Phoenicia Rogerson, which was actually the first book by her that I read. It was great. And I didn't think anything could surpass it, but somehow this one did. I got this as an arc off NetGalley, but I loved it so much that I had to get a physical copy as well. This is a reimagining of the life of the goddess Aphrodite, as she starts off as a literal nobody. She eventually kind of rises through the ranks of Olympus and eventually tries to take down the king of the gods himself. I love Phoenicia Rogerson's writing style. It's so witty and clever and like laugh out loud funny, but also at times it is heartbreakingly sad as well. It's a nice balance between the two. You kind of cry tears of laughter and then 2 pages later you're crying tears of sadness. This book is told in multiple POVs. You get perspectives from so many different characters and they're all very different styles as well. Like each character has a very distinct narrative voice, which I love. But also throughout, you get footnotes from the POV of Aphrodite herself, and they are characteristically sassy and sarcastic. And it's so much fun to read, honestly. This is definitely one of my favourite retellings of the year. Next up, we have The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden. This is the most recent winner of the Women's Prize for Fiction, and for good reason, it slaps. This is historical fiction taking place in the Netherlands in the 50s? Late 50s? Maybe? Can't quite remember. It's kind of in the aftermath of World War II. We follow a quite a standoffish, quite cold, introverted woman who lives by herself in a house, and then she ends up kind of having to host her brother's girlfriend for a few weeks for reasons, and they hate each other. Um, they just are complete opposites, and yeah, there's a lot of tension, and then that tension turns into something different. If I were to describe this book as an enemies to lover story, I wouldn't be completely wrong, but I also wouldn't be fully capturing the multitudes contained within this book. It also, talks about what happened after the Holocaust, after the war was over and the Jewish population of Europe thought that they were safe and they could return to normal. That wasn't always the case. Often they also had to face a lot of hardships when they got home as well. And of course there's also discussion of internalized homophobia and sexism and the pressure for women to, get married and start families. This isn't actually my copy. I read this as an ebook, but I got a physical copy for my mum for Christmas because I thought she'd really enjoy it. It is just a fantastic, well-written book. And I'm not into historical fiction from this period of time. Like anything to do with World War II, I'm a bit like, no, thank you. But this is definitely an exception. Next up, we have A Fatal Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, Murder in Ancient Rome by Emma Southon. I have sung this book's praises several times on the channel, so I'm going to keep it fairly brief. This is a book that talks about murder and violence in various forms in the late Roman Republic and early Roman Empire. It covers quite a brief period of time, but in so much depth. What I love about this book is that it is so accessible. It's so beginner friendly. The writing style is funny and witty and fast paced. And like there was never a point where my eyes started to glaze over because it got a little bit dull. It's always so interesting, but at the same time as being beginner friendly, it is so scholarly. Like it will scrutinize sources, it will criticize sources, look at them with a critical eye, talk about how they might not be completely trustworthy if they were, written by a certain type of person who has a certain agenda. There is just so much detail in this book, and I learned a massive amount. Then we have The Deep by Rivers Solomon. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this book on this channel before as well. It was inspired by a song by the group Clipping, which was in turn, I think, also inspired by a different song. It's kind of like a modern oral tradition, I guess. But this is kind of a speculative fantasy that follows a community of merfolk descended from pregnant women who were thrown off of slave ships during the slave trade. And the collective memories of this entire community are held by one person who is known as the historian, who is tasked with collecting all of these memories, holding them, storing them, and then sharing them with the community once a year. But this is a really, really difficult job because there is so much trauma in those memories that the current historian, who is the main character called Yetu is so overwhelmed by the pain of this job of storing all of these memories in her head that she ends up fleeing and kind of going on a little adventure of self discovery for herself. It's just a beautifully written book that talks about the importance of remembering and sharing one's history with one's community, and learning from the past so that past mistakes, past wrongs are not done again. Next up, we have The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. This was one of the first books I read this year, and it has stuck with me ever since. It's so good. This book is kind of a dual timeline literary fiction. The first timeline is kind of modern day. It's set in the present. It follows this rather surly, moody teenager who is grieving her mother. She has a bit of a complicated relationship with her father, who is also very, very heavily afflicted by grief. And she starts talking to her aunt, I want to say, I think on her mother's side, who visits from Cyprus. Cyprus is where her parents are from, and she starts kind of being interested in learning about her family history and how her parents met. And then the second timeline, the past timeline, is set in Cyprus in the 70s, and it follows this girl's parents. One of them is a Greek Cypriot, and the other one is a Turkish Cypriot, and they are meeting and falling in love in the middle of a very kind of tumultuous time in the country politically, just before the Cypriot civil war. And both of these two timelines are kind of brought together by this kind of uniting motif of the fig tree. It's a fig tree? Yeah. A fig tree that like has chapters from its own point of view. Like you get chapters from the fig tree's point of view, which is such a wonderful narrative device. I love a unique narration method. It's just so gorgeously written. It's heartbreaking. It's so sad because like you do kind of know how the past timeline is going to end given what has happened in the present timeline, but like you are still rooting for these young lovers all the same. Next up is Little Rot by Akwaeke Emezi. This is kind of a blending of genres. It's a bit of a literary thriller, set in Lagos in Nigeria, following a group of quite a few different characters over the course of like a couple of days. I want to say over the course of like a weekend, in this city, and these characters are all kind of interconnected in various ways, but you don't find out how they're interconnected until like you're a good chunk of the way through the book, and then you're like, oh, so that's how they know them, and that's how they know them, and okay, so these people are like in deep shit right now. So we start off with two people, a couple who have like just broken up, and they're both completely heartbroken. Um, they really loved each other, but like it was not going to work out, and in kind of coping with that heartbreak, they both set off like a chain of events that leads to like life or death situations. There, like a mafia gets involved, and it's like shady stuff. It really draws you into like all of the terrible things that these really, really wealthy, powerful people get away with, and like they're powerful and they're incredibly dangerous. Like you can't cross them. I read this book so quickly because I did not want to put it down. I was on the edge of my seat, just like hoping that things would turn out okay, but not really seeing a way they were going to. I will say, like, this goes for all of these books, but for this one, definitely check content warnings because it does get really, really dark and quite graphic. So yeah, check content warnings. This is definitely not for everyone. It gets super dark, but I just found it so thrilling. Next up, we have, of course, a B. Fitzgerald book. You really thought that I was going to make a video without including B. Fitzgerald in some way. This is A Beautiful Evil. It's B. Fitzgerald's new young adult mythology retelling. This is a retelling of the story of Pandora. Um, yeah, I've definitely talked about this book at length before, so I will keep it relatively brief. This book is fantastic. It's like a kind of a grumpy sunshine romance. It's got kind of forbidden love vibes as well, because this is like a love that is so powerful that it could literally destroy the world. Like it is fated to destroy the world. There's like bits of like time travel as well. Like the timeline is a little bit wonky. It's a bit timey-wimey, which I love. I love anything that's to do with time travel. So combining time travel with Greek mythology is something that like I never thought I needed. It's a crossover I never thought I'd needed, but it is fantastic. What else? Oh, Pandora is a plus size autistic woman in this, and both her kind of depiction as a plus size woman and as an autistic woman is just so well done. Um, like she complains about thighs chafing, and it's so real. That's like the realest presentation of a plus size woman ever. And B. Fitzgerald also drew from her own personal experiences as an autistic woman to influence her depiction of Pandora as well. So the representation is super accurate there. And yeah, it's so nice to see an increase in neurodivergent rep in young adult books. Um, but like representation in books that aren't just about being neurodivergent. Like Pandora is autistic and plus size, which are two quite important aspects of her personality, but there are so many more aspects to her character in this book as well. Like she contains multitudes, and that's just so refreshing to see. One thing to know about me is I will always be sat for a Beavis Fitzgerald book, and this is no different. I love this so much, and I think this is possibly my favorite cover as well, like ever. It's so shiny and pretty. I'm a sucker for anything green, so like this is great. It's so shiny. Next up, we have Chain Gang All Stars by Nanakwame Adjei-Brenyah. This is a speculative kind of sci-fi dystopian book that imagines what it might be like if people in the prison system in the US were allowed to compete in gladiatorial matches for their freedom. So like there's this whole gladiator circuit that people who are facing the death penalty, or if they're on like really, really long sentences, they can kind of opt into, but also that is like a really complicated thing as well that's wrapped up in a lot of bureaucracy, and a lot of people don't have a choice in the matter. But that's, yeah, again, a whole other thing. But basically, if you spend like 3 years on this circuit and you survive all of these various matches to the death, then you get your freedom. But I think only like one person has ever achieved that, like ever. And we follow, amongst many, many other characters, one of the main people we follow is someone who is like a few matches away from doing the same, being the second person to ever be awarded freedom. And we follow her and her like team, I guess, her group of fellow prisoners on the circuit. We also follow like the commentator for the gladiator matches, people who are like high up in the system who like organize everything and introduce new rules, people who are fans of the sport. It's like a massive thing with a huge following. It's like football, basically. Um, we follow people who object to it and protest these this whole system, the matches. We really get a very clear picture of it through all of these different perspectives. It's a very vivid picture of what this world might look like. And what I love most about this book is that like the world building is backed up by real life cases. There are footnotes in this book that cite real life cases, like laws and stuff that have existed in real life, um, like outcomes of trials and things that like have inspired aspects of the world that seem so brutal and like they couldn't have happened, but they have happened in the past. And that just kind of it really it really shows how close we could be to living in a world like this, and that's kind of scary, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, this was a fantastic read. Again, made me feel slightly uncomfortable, but like in a good way, I guess, in a making you kind of rethink your morality kind of way. And then my final 4.75 star rated book is The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. Again, R.F. Kuang had to turn up somewhere in this list. Honorable mention to Catabasis, which I also rated 4.75 stars, but this one just pipped it. This is book 2 in the Poppy War trilogy. I'm pretty sure book 1 appeared on my list last year, but this one is, oh my god, it's so good. It immediately sucks you right back into the world. The world building is amazing. It's like directly inspired by like historical events that actually happened in Chinese history. There are parallels with it being invaded by Japan, parallels with it being invaded by European nations, mostly Britain. Rin is just such a fantastic protagonist. Like, she is flawed. Like, morally, she's pretty grey as it goes. You don't always agree with her actions. In fact, there are definitely times where I've been like, girl, no, stop it, don't do that. But at the same time, you kind of understand why she might do what she does, out of desperation or like determination to achieve a certain result. Yeah, she is just such a driven protagonist, and that makes her make some mistakes sometimes. I just loved how the story progressed in this book. I loved the development in world building, the fact that we got to see new areas, new places in the country. We were introduced to new characters, reintroduced to some old characters. Yeah, I love this. I thought it was fantastic, and the ending of the book killed me off. I got a copy of The Burning God for Christmas, and I will be reading that next year. And I'm terrified to see this trilogy come to an end. And now, finally, we have come to the last 3 books on this list, and all of these books I rated 5 stars. These are the only new books that I rated 5 stars this year. They're, to me, perfect. They just really had that 5-star feeling, and yeah, they do truly live rent free in my brain forever. So first up we have Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. This book follows three sisters who grew up together but have ended up living in completely different places around the world. But 1 year after the death of their fourth sister, they end up reuniting. Their parents are selling the flat they grew up in, and they need to kind of go and pick up the pieces. Basically, the book is multiple POV. It follows the perspectives of the three surviving sisters. They're all so different, but they just kind of they fit together really really well, and I just loved how they were kind of all set up, I guess, in the prologue, how kind of their roles as they were being brought up kind of translated to their personalities um, as adults, and what they do and the mistakes that they make. They're all so messy and flawed and three-dimensional, and like they fight, they say some terrible things to each other, but it's so clear they love each other at the same time. Like Coco Mellors just gets being a sister and having sisters. She just gets it. She writes it so well. Yeah, I love this book a lot. It did make me cry. Next up, we have The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. Of course, we're going to have another Becky Chambers book on this list. She always turns up. This is the fourth and final book in the Wayfarers series. I have been putting off reading this for so long, and I finally decided to give it a read this month, a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, it's great. It's so good. So the entire Wayfarers series is kind of set in this kind of Star Trek like deep space community, um, where you have so many different species of alien, um, kind of coexisting, I guess, in collective space. But with that, obviously, come kind of cultural differences and like issues with like territory and dealing with like colonization in the past and still healing from that, and accessibility issues as well, depending on like each species of alien having different kind of biology and anatomy and stuff. In this particular book, you have a group of very different aliens who are all kind of stranded on what is basically like the deep space travel equivalent of a service station. It's kind of a space where you kind of land your ship and get supplies and stuff and have a rest before you go to like a wormhole thing where you like travel through space. So like due to like technical issues, a group of aliens are stuck there for a few days, and we kind of basically get to learn more about them and how they might interact with each other. And you know, they might befriend each other, they might have like disagreements based on like ideological um differences. I think this is the only book in the series where humans aren't like at the forefront. Um, I think there is like one human character in this entire book, and they appear for like maybe 5 pages. Um, but the rest of them are not humans. They are all various different species of alien. I love how much thought Becky Chambers puts into like the science of her world building and the creation of these different species. It's all like so thought out. Like the science is there and the logic is there. And I also really loved how these species of alien who are so different to us as humans, as a society, they still were able to kind of discuss deeper political issues that affect us in real life. For example, like colonization, systemic racism that is just kind of baked into society, having to unlearn certain things, certain biases that you might have been taught, even if those biases were taught like unconsciously, and then relearning a more kind of compassionate and empathetic viewpoint. Becky Chambers' books are really just a masterclass in empathy. They're just it's cozy sci-fi, but it still gives space to talk about these really deep issues. And I just really like the fact that you can do both, and you can do both so well. It's just such a heartwarming series, and it's definitely one that I will be returning to again and again. And then finally, the last book I want to talk about, and this is probably, I'm going to say, my book of 2025. We have Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love this book so much. This book is kind of a alternate historical fiction, following a woman called Joan, who is training to be one of the first female astronauts to travel to space in like the 70s. I want to say the 80s, around then. It follows two timelines. You have the past timeline where Joan is kind of applying to NASA, training with them, her kind of her getting ready for her first space mission, meeting her team, getting close with her team, particularly with one particular pilot, astronaut in training, I guess, called Vanessa. A little bit of pining going on. And then the present day timeline, well, present day it's like still the 80s, but it's further in the future when Joan is like an experienced astronaut. We follow a space mission that is currently going on, but something has happened that means that things are not going great. So we have this present day space mission gone wrong, and then you have the past, Joan kind of starting her astronaut career, and both those two timelines are kind of alternating, I guess. And I loved everything about this book. I loved the characters. I got so attached to so many of the characters, which meant that like when we were getting to the chapters about the space mission going wrong, I was fearing for everyone. I loved how they were interacting with each other, especially Joan and Vanessa. The pining. There's just so much pining. And the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid writes about space and the experience of like looking up into the night sky and feeling incredibly small and insignificant, but that not scaring you, that actually kind of exciting you to the point where you want to be up there, you want to be amongst the stars, despite how dangerous it is to be up there. Like, it was just so, it was written so eloquently. And as a bit of a space nerd myself, I was so here for it. I sobbed during this book several times. Tears of sadness mostly, but also tears of happiness. I love it so much. And that's it. Those are the 25 best books that I read in 2025. Hopefully, some of those will have tickled your fancy and you will want to add them to your 2026 TBRs. If you have already read any of them, let me know your thoughts as well. I hope you enjoyed them just as much as I did. Yeah, and I need more people to talk about my favorite books with anyway. So yeah, let me know. Also, tell me about your favorite books you read this year. I'd love to get new book recommendations. It's always an excellent excuse to go out and buy more books. Thank you so much for watching this video and getting to the end. Well done, you made it. If you enjoyed it, then please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Got lots of stuff planned in the coming year. It's very exciting. You can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, Storygraph, Blue Sky. My username on all those platforms is @withLivJones for even more bookish content. Thank you so much again for watching. Happy New Year, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!